I was 8 years a narcotics officer in West Texas and East Texas. My bosses in recent interviews called me one of the top narcotics officers in the nation. I don't believe that, but I'll take that if that's what I need to get people to listen. I was involved in over 100 search warrants. I personally arrested over 800 people for drugs. I seized numerous autos and hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash. I worked joint operations with the FBI, the DEA, U.S. Border Patrol, and U.S. military. There's not any part of the drug scene in America that I didn't see. I got disillusioned with the drug war, and years later, I realized that the harms the drug war was causing was more harm than the drugs themselves, and I was involved in some of the corruption, and I did what every man's supposed to do, and that's to fix your errors. So I released these 2 videos. 2 years ago, I released one. Last year, we released the other one. And I teach all the secrets that our government taught me on how to put good citizens in a cage. And I teach how to counter those measures that they use against citizens. Coming off the success of that, Candy and I were in one of our CEO board meetings, which consist of us in our bedroom pillow talking. And Candy said, you know, actually I was crying because of all the lives I had ruined. And I've got a nice family. I've got 4 kids. 16-year-old daughter starts Austin Community College. So we're big on family and education.
That's right. You're an Austinite.
Yes. We just moved to Austin 5 months ago. Yeah, to launch Cop Busters.
And you worked in Texas before in your career.
Yes, sir, out in Odessa, Texas.
Well, let's first get into how you got disillusioned, how you woke up to what's happening. I mean, there's the basic facts out there for folks to be aware of, that the drug war just gets bigger and bigger, and more drugs are on the streets, and we've gone from less than 1 million in prison to over 4 million in prison and millions on parole. It just gets worse and worse and worse.
That's right. Even the DEA will admit that we have more people in jail than ever before for drugs, yet we have more drugs on the street that are more potent than ever before at a cheaper price. So the drug war has failed to the tune of placing good human beings, millions, in a cage. You know, every 38 seconds, somebody in America gets placed in a cage for pot crimes. So we're fighting that, and we wanted to expose the corruption in the drug war because our email box stayed slammed with people saying, please help me, there are corrupt cops in my town. So Candy said, honey, why don't you were good at busting citizens, why don't you start stinging the cops?
So it was her idea.
Yeah, it was her idea. 6 months later, we had our first cop stung in Odessa. We set a trap for them, and it worked.
Go back to why you were crying, why you were upset, why you were feeling bad about what you were involved with, what that basic corruption was, and then boil down some of those stings.
I was upset and crying because I've got 4 kids that I see every day, and we're big on family. And then I remember the look of kids on these raids that I was involved in, kicking in doors at 3 o'clock in the morning after throwing in a flash grenade, and mom and dad screaming, and we're screwing pistols into their ears, and the kids are screaming, and then we haul the kids off to Department of Human Services. And I remember those kids crying, and then, that didn't go away just because I left that house. That person's marked forever with that terror. And I was on the other end of a civil raid, and I remember the terrorizing effect that had on my kids, so I kind of got a taste of my own medicine. And Candy, I was drinking a lot of vodka then, like, most yuppie business type guys do. But I was drinking too much, and she would come out with bring me pot and say, here, smoke this. And I would smoke that and not want the alcohol any longer.
And that's why a lot of officers, just interrupt, end up being alcoholics, the highest statistic in that profession, because it is a stressful, crazy job.
Yeah, it's horrible. But that's not an excuse either, But my point is, Candy helped me get off the alcohol, and I started smoking pot.
So marijuana helped you?
Helped me. It does something for me. It made me a more compassionate person, and I stopped and slowed down long enough to realize the harms that I was creating on this earth instead of helping.
Plus, he was much nicer when he smoked.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, sweet
So I
enough.
married my pot dealer.
Yeah, pretty much.
And then I got on the internet and I started reading the statistics and what was really happening with this drug war. And I started remembering back to the corruption I was involved in, planting drugs on people, lying on search warrants,
And that's
stealing
standard now.
money.
That's standard now. I mean, not just Tulia, Texas, planting cocaine on 50-plus black people, not just Houston framing more than 4,000 people, Houston Chronicle, not just the FBI crime lab saying it was standard just to frame everybody. I mean, this is the norm, not the exception.
That's exactly right. You know,
How did they induct you into that?
I believed what I was doing was right when I was planting the drugs and lying on search warrants. Because my parents raised me, anybody that does drugs is evil, and the school reinforced that when I went to school with their programs.
But it's okay to drink vodka or take Prozac.
It's not. It's better to smoke pot.
But exactly, I'm
absolutely.
saying they push all these really dangerous drugs, but then go after marijuana because that's 86% of people that use drugs only use that. Without that, their drug war's over. But go ahead.
That's right. You're exactly right. And the church reinforced it. You know, went to church, and so by the time I was a young man and the government got a hold of me in the police academy, they even reinforced those beliefs more. So I believed that I was serving the greater good. I didn't realize that breaking constitutional law and taking freedoms away from people was causing more harm. I really believed at the time that all the corruption I was involved in was helping the movement, and that was to get drugs out of America. Ronald Reagan was one of my heroes. You know, Kevin Booth, I sell his film, the drug war film, that proves Ronald Reagan was involved in smuggling the cocaine. You know, I was arresting people with Ronald Reagan crack in their pockets. And it just kind of the Oz screen fell. And what I thought was this big, powerful American voice turned out to be a little bald-headed, tiny man that
Well, you
was
know, the
scared of
British
sin.
160 years ago used opium importation to take control of China and set up a police state and then overthrow it. So this is really a formula to bring down a nation as a pretext to bring in the military, which they now use in drug interdiction inside the country.
Well, it's worked. Look where our country is right now. They're successful at scaring the American people. And hopefully our efforts will help fix some of that by exposing these cops on camera.
How do police officers that are still narcotics officers, how do they, on average, respond to you? I know there's thousands and thousands of police that have joined an organization that is, former narcotics officers against prohibition.
Yes, LEAP.cc, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. 6,500 politicians, judges, and police are saying the same thing to end the drug war. To answer your question, we get death threats from police, usually through emails. And I've kept those, filed away safely, but they've emailed us horrible things such as, I hope Candy gets raped while you're in prison for releasing those films, and I'll see you on the shoulder if you ever come through my jurisdiction. So they're not happy about it, and which is unfortunate.
Well, because subconsciously they have a lot of guilt, and so they need to keep the facade going of what they've done when it's a CIA aircraft last year crashed with 3.5 tons of pure cocaine, meaning coming from source, folks. They're caught all the time shipping. They ship the majority of the drugs in. The drug war internationally is only against cowboys that don't launder their money with them. The head of the New York Stock Exchange back in '99 flew to Colombia and met on TV with the head of the FARC and said, invest your drug money with us or we're going to invade your country. There's an international loophole where drug money internationally is allowed to be invested in U.S. banks. That's how open their drug dealing is. They ship it in, but that isn't enough to keep it illegal so they get big profits. Then they get all the incredible profits on the ground in the name of fighting the drugs. And police, you can't deny that anymore. I mean, it's been in Esquire magazine. It's been on ABC News. I mean, it's on record that the majority of narcotics are shipped in here by the federal government.
That's right. And we spend $90 billion a year now in this war on drugs, and they still are using the propaganda to make us believe that this country will go crazy if we legalize the drugs, when the truth is we give millions of citizens every day doses of heroin in the form of Oxycontin and hydrocodone. We give millions of citizens doses of methamphetamine every day, mostly to kids, in the form of Ritalin and Adderall.
And by the way,
and they're not burglarizing and
100
raping.
million people That just came out in 2008. 100 million people are now on serotonin reuptake inhibitors, or Prozac class alone. 100 million. On the insert of that drug, it says it's in the hallucinogen psychotropic class and puts you into a dream state and is highly toxic to the brain and body and creates psychotic breaks, suicidal tendencies. It's all in the literature that comes with the drug. Meanwhile, no one dies of marijuana.
That's right.
And by the way, folks, I'm not some marijuana person. I don't like it. It makes me paranoid. It's just not what I'm into. I like a Budweiser, and I don't even do that. At least most of the time, I try not to. I'm not a pot guy, and I'm telling you, George Washington smoked it. And until the 30s, you could walk into any drugstore and buy heroin, buy opiates, buy speed, buy cocaine. Coca-Cola had cocaine in it, and we had about 1/10, and you can go look at the statistics of Americans using those drugs that are now. By making it illegal, it makes it taboo, makes it profitable. Just like alcoholism tripled under the 10 years of prohibition back in the